Hello students, today I am going to discuss on general and ear instruments in ENT practice. First let's come to head mirror. The head mirror is the instrument which is made of headband and the mirror with a screw here which can be loosened and it can be tightened, and this is the concave mirror with focal length of 23 centimeters, diameter of 9 centimeters, and there is a hole in the middle of the mirror which is 2 centimeters in diameter. The hole helps us to see through both the eyes for binocular vision, which is required in ENT practice because we have to have stereoscopic vision for looking in deep cavities like ear, nose and throat. Nowadays there are many alternatives for head mirror. They are illuminating headlight or fiber optic headlights. This is the illuminating headlight. Battery is here, and this headlight can be used as the primary source of light. Therefore, we don't require the light source as we require in head mirror. We have to use head mirror with a bull's eye lamp that provides the light in the mirror. This is a concave mirror. So concave mirror focuses the light on the object. So nowadays, most of the hospitals they acquire head light in comparison to head mirror. Next instrument is the aural speculum, which is used to see the deeper part of the external artery canal, especially the bony portion and the tympanic membrane. The instrument is held with the thumb and index finger holding the speculum and other fingers retracting the pinna to make it straight. So it is retracted upwards, backwards and laterally. And the speculum is inserted in corkscrew motion so the patient won't have much pain. So don't directly insert the speculum. And it is better to see the patient's caliber of external artery canal before inserting the speculum, so you can use the greatest size speculum snugly fitting on the external artery canal. Next instrument is Jobson Horne probe with Rinne curette. This is also a very important instrument in ENT practice. What are the uses of curette and probe ends? You can here see the Rinne curette and you can see the probe part here. The Rinne curette, as you know, it is used for removal of foreign body and wax from the ear, and small foreign bodies from the nose also can be removed. So this curette part is the curette part, and this probe end is serrated. This one is the serrated probe. So you can see it is serrated and helps for better grip of the cotton over the probe, and is used for dry mopping of the ear and probe test in the nose. You can wrap cotton over here, you can make it soft and you can insert in the ear to remove the wax, and you can even use for probe testing, which will be discussed later in the title under instruments of the nose. Next is otoscope. Otoscope is used to examine the external artery canal and tympanic membrane. The bony canal is examined properly with the help of otoscope. Otoscope magnifies vision by 2 times, so it will be easy for us to see the magnified view of tympanic membrane. It is also self-illuminating light. There is light here, so light source is not required. Next is Hartmann's aural dressing forceps. This is Hartmann's aural dressing forceps. This is a small forceps. The easy way to remember here is it has a depression in the center. It is used as packing forceps to pack the external artery canal with medicated gauze piece. It can also be used to remove foreign body from external artery canal or nose, like paper and the things which can be grasped by the forceps. Whilst dressing forceps are used as packing forceps to pack the ear or nose with medicated gauze piece following surgery or in prevention of EAC and to remove the pack. It can also be used to remove the foreign body from ear or from the nasal cavity. Nowadays, most commonly used forceps are Hartmann's aural dressing forceps, then Weil's dressing forceps, which were used in the past. Next is Siegle's pneumatic speculum. The magnification of it is 2 times. This is the pneumatic bulb and this is the speculum. This is slightly angled. This is same as aural speculum, but rubber tubing must be kept posteriorly around 3 o'clock for the left ear and 9 o'clock for the right ear. So this is 3 o'clock and patient is being examined on the left ear. A very common question to be asked in the exam is what are the uses of Siegle's pneumatic speculum? Used for magnified view of the tympanic membrane 2 times, fistula test to check the mobility of tympanic membrane. It can also be used to elicit Brown sign in glomus tumor and sublution of medications in CSM, which was used in the past. It's also used to differentiate between retraction pocket and TM perforation. Tuning forks are common instruments used in ENT practice and very commonly asked instruments in the final exam also. Common frequencies used in ENT practice are 256, 512 and 1024 Hz. Most commonly used is 512 Hz because the tuning fork of 128 Hz has more of the vibration sense and 1024 Hz has short tone decay time. Therefore, the tone decay is very fast in 1024 and there is more of the vibration sense in 256. So, we use 512 Hz tuning fork most commonly in the ENT practice. Although you are supposed to have all the frequencies 256, 512 and 1024 during your exam, and all have to be used when the patient has conductive hearing loss. Are prongs, soldier, stem and base. These are the prongs. This is the soldier, this is the stem and this is the base. Stem has thickened area for the fingers to be there and the frequency is written here only. Where to strike on the tuning forks? The common striking surfaces are olecranon, radial started process, patella, thenar and hypothenar eminences and sometimes thick rubber pad also. Where to strike on the tuning fork? This is a very important question to be asked. It's usually strike between the proximal 2/3 and distal 1/3 of the prongs. This is the most common site for vibration. What is its axis of vibration and how far from the EAC do you keep the tuning fork? The axis of vibration is longitudinal and the tuning fork is kept around 2 cm away from the level of tragus in the longitudinal fashion. The next question to be asked by is what are the common tuning fork tests carried out in the ENT practice? You know all: Rinne, Weber, absolute bone conduction test and Sabak test. You can also be asked about the principles, techniques and result interpretation of different tuning fork tests. Why does Weber test lateralize to differ here in conductive deafness? The one is lack of masking effect of surrounding noise on tuning fork sound as air conduction reduced on conductive deafness, and second is lack of dispersion of sound energy due to auricular break. Describe about false negative Rinne. This is also commonly asked question. Etiology of false negative Rinne is unilateral, severe to profound sensorineural deafness. It is detected by Rinne negative and Weber lateralized to better ear, confirmed by ABC, in which there will be reduced in ABC on the deaf ear. It is corrected by repeat Rinne test with masking of the better ear, and mechanism is in deaf ear, air conduction and bone conduction are absent. So transcranial transmission of sound to opposite cochlea is perceived as ipsilateral bone conduction and is reported as bone conduction more than air conduction in deaf ear. That is Rinne negative. But when there is false negative Rinne, patient does not hear at all in the examined ear in Rinne test. So but in case of Rinne negative, patient hears both in air conduction as well as bone conduction, but bone conduction is better than air conduction. But in false negative Rinne, patient does not hear at all in air conduction. That is very important. Next instrument is Simpson's oral syringe. The indications of syringing are removal of wax and non-hygroscopic foreign body from the ear. Nozzle is always directed towards posterior superior portion of the patient's external aortic canal. Why does it have 3 rings? So one hand can open and close the syringe and other hand is free to retract the pinna. This is important. What are the contraindications of syringing? When there is infection of the ear, when there is furuncle, when there is tympanic membrane perforation, and when there is hygroscopic foreign body, syringing is better not tried. The patient will have pain. And in case of tympanic membrane perforation, there might be infection of the middle ear. In hygroscopic foreign bodies, the foreign body might swell up if we cannot remove. So sometimes the patient requires general anesthesia. Next question: what are the possible complications of syringing? The patient might have pain, there might be trauma to EAC, perforation of tympanic membrane, fungal infections, or patient also might have vasovagal syncope due to vagal stimulation. You have to use the lukewarm water or water at body temperature. So water should not be very hot or should not be very cold to avoid the caloric effect. This is the syringing. As you can see, this is foreign body and syringing is performed here and foreign body is removed. Now let us come to surgical equipment. First is myringotomy knife or myringotome. This is a myringotomy knife. This is the tip of the myringotomy knife. It is aerocept. It is used for myringotomy, that is making an opening in tympanic membrane. The indications of myringotomy are ASOM, aneurysm medullary effusion. Other indications of grommet insertion are OME, aortic retraction pocket formation, medullary atelectasis, Meniere's disease for gentamicin eardrops, and for Meniere's device. Most common indication for myringotomy is otitis media of the effusion. The next question is like, where do you make the incision and why? Why is the knife biointercept? And is there any difference in site of puncture between ASM and OME? Can be asked in the exam. Incision is made in the anterior inferior quadrant and the incision is always made as radial incision. Sometimes when the patient is having ASM and pus doesn't come out properly, then we have to make the circumference incision. The knife is binary shaped, it won't obstruct the vision. And there is difference between puncture in ASM and OME. In OME, puncture is made in the anterior quadrant, and in case of ASM, the puncture is made in the posterior inferior quadrant, which is most dependent area. Now coming to Mollison's self-retaining hemostatic mastoid retractor, this is also a very commonly asked question in the exam. This is the Mollison's self-retaining hemostatic mastoid retractor. See, this is the retractor. Two retractors are being used. The question asked is, what are the uses of the instruments? It is used to retract post-auricular skin incision during mastoid surgery and to harvest temporary special graft for tympanoplasty. This is the post-auricular incision here. There is the pinna and this is the mastoid and this is the mastoid cortex. It is used in retracting the post-auricular incision. How is it self-retaining? It is due to lever action. So you can see this is the lever action and it is self-retaining. How to approximate the blades? We can approximate by pressing down the lever. There is a lever there. We can press down the lever. And how does it achieve hemostasis? It achieves hemostasis by mechanical pressure of teeth of the retractor. So that they are teeth of retractor. Okay, that leads to mechanical pressure. If you just the last instrument for today is Farabov's periosteal elevator. This is used to elevate the muscular periosteal layer in post-auricular incision during mastoid surgery. So this is for thumb and this is the periosteal elevator. So as you can see here, this periosteum can be elevated with Farabov's periosteum elevator. Thank you. Please like my channel Dr. Krishna Koirala for part 2 and part 3 of the instruments. Thank you.